Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're focusing on a single event, but it's one that really serves as this jarring case study in just how vulnerable our critical infrastructure is.
It really does.
We are going to be dissecting the cyber attack that hit the major Belgian hospital group AZ Monica. This happened across its Antwerp and Deurne campuses on Tuesday, January 13th, 2026.
And for this deep dive, we're building it around one core source, really detailing the timeline and the catastrophic real-world consequences of that digital failure.
Exactly.
If you really want to understand the immediate cost of a server shutdown in a life-or-death environment, well, this incident, it provides all the answers.
It really does. Our mission today is pretty clear. We're not just, reporting the news. We're trying to extract the critical insights about how fast and how severely patient care gets hit when the digital nervous system of a hospital just goes dark.
And that's the perfect way to put it, a digital nervous system.
Okay, let's unpack this operational collapse.
What's fascinating here, and also terrifying, is the speed. I mean, a hospital is a machine built on continuity, on process. The second you introduce chaos, lives are genuinely at risk.
So what was the first domino to fall?
The first key piece of information is the time of impact. The hospital decided definitively to disconnect all of its servers at exactly 6:32 a.m.
6:32 in the morning. That is a staggering moment. Think about that decision. It signals they knew immediately that they had a massive breach. They were forced to choose between containing a digital threat and keeping their own core systems running.
It's the ultimate triage decision, isn't it? You are hitting the big red emergency stop button, essentially severing the brain from the body of the hospital. They contained the threat, sure, maybe stopped it from spreading further or destroying more data, but the containment itself, that act kicked off a total operational failure.
And this wasn't just a small localized problem. This response crippled AZ Monica's operations across both of its major campuses.
Both, simultaneously. In Antwerp and Deurne, the scale was systemic from the word go.
Which means the chain reaction must have been instantaneous.
Oh, completely. The moment those systems went down, the source material confirms the suspension of all scheduled procedures for the entire day. January 13th, just wiped.
Every single one. So every hip replacement, every routine scope, every planned surgery, just gone.
Gone. They just couldn't guarantee safe care without those digital tools. It was too risky.
And it didn't just stop at scheduled procedures, did it? What about the emergency room?
That's the next domino. The front line of care, the emergency department, was forced to operate at a severely reduced capacity. So if you had a sudden, a severe medical issue that morning, the hospital's ability to even take you in and process you was already strained to the bracing point.
Which brings us to the point where this digital crisis translates directly into a life safety crisis.
Yeah.
This is the true cost of the attack.
Exactly. And here's where it gets, for me, really interesting and just intensely alarming. The failure of the specialized transport units.
Okay, so we're not just talking about systems that support paperwork anymore. We're talking about the systems that support the most vulnerable patients.
Precisely. The press statements confirmed that their highly critical specialized transport services were suddenly not operational.
Not operational.
We are specifically talking about the emergency medical services, known in Belgium as MUG, which stands for Mobile Urgent Group, and the PIT, or Paramedical Intervention Team, transport services.
Okay, for our listeners who might not know those acronyms, what does it actually mean when MUG and PIT go offline?
It's bad. MUG and PIT are basically mobile intensive care units. The MUG service, that involves an emergency physician and specialized equipment rushing to a critical scene, or importantly, transporting a critically unstable patient between hospitals.
Okay.
And PIT often involves advanced life support paramedics. So when those systems fail, you lose the ability to safely move or monitor your most fragile patients, the ones who need intensive care or immediate life-saving intervention outside of an operating room.
That is genuinely devastating.
Yeah.
The risk just spikes exponentially because the hospital can't even maintain its own internal critical transport network.
Correct. And we see the immediate high-stakes action they had to take to mitigate that risk. To secure their safety, 7 patients who required that high level of critical, continuous care were immediately transferred to other hospitals.
7 critical patients moved in a scramble.
And the source material specifically notes the Red Cross was involved in helping at that process.
That detail alone tells you the sheer logistical pressure they were under. This wasn't a routine transfer. This was a high-risk evacuation because the digital life support infrastructure had just vanished.
It's a remarkable demonstration of rapid collaborative triage, really. It forced staff to move the sickest people because the technology they needed to support them, where they were just evaporated at 6.32 in the morning.
Now, we should pause here and really acknowledge the heroic efforts of the staff who were still on site. The hospital did emphasize that urgent treatment for patients who were already there, that it continued. The remaining patients were still getting necessary care. So while the system fractured, the core human dedication to care, that was still there.
Yes, the people were working, but their tools were broken. And that leads us directly to the core vulnerability that crippled everything else: the total loss of accessible information. This is the third major failure point.
The digital wall, as you called it before. So non-urgent consultations were postponed. Why? It wasn't just about scheduling, was it?
Not at all. It was about the fundamental inability to retrieve the information locked away in the patient's digital medical files.
This really underscores just how dependent modern medicine is on the electronic health record, the EHR.
It's an absolute dependence. A modern doctor doesn't rely on some dusty folder. They rely on a digital database. And when that database is locked, you lose everything. I mean, detailed medical history, existing medication lists, known allergies, recent lab results, imaging reports. It's all gone.
And without that complete picture, providing safe, non-urgent care becomes basically impossible.
Exactly. The hospital spokeswoman, Sophie Bram, she confirmed this challenge. She stated they simply couldn't proceed with many appointments because they had no way to securely and accurately access those digital files.
I mean, you can imagine being a specialist about to see a patient for the first time, and you don't even know their blood type or if they're allergic to penicillin.
You can't proceed. You just can't do it responsibly.
And this loss of digital efficiency, it forces everything back onto these challenging analog procedures. It must have dramatically slowed down the intake of any new patients.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this is the organizational resilience lesson everyone needs to learn from this. The hospital had to warn the public that registration procedures for new patients would be severely slowed down. Why? Because employees, quote, have to register a lot of things on paper.
So what does that actually look like on the ground for, the average patient walking in?
It's a nightmare. It means that a standardized, maybe 10-minute digital intake process where your information is automatically verified and logged, it suddenly becomes a 45-minute manual interview and transcription process.
Wow.
You have staff who are trained to use sophisticated software, and now they're suddenly hunting for the right forms, manually handwriting insurance details, and trying to decipher messy notes. The queue just backs up instantly. The speed of a digital compromise is so much faster than the speed of a manual, paper-based recovery.
That inefficiency isn't just an inconvenience. In an emergency setting, time is tissue. Delayed intake can translate directly into poorer patient outcomes.
It's a single point of failure. The digital convenience we've built into our systems becomes this thing that paralyzes us completely when it's attacked.
It's fascinating because the digital attack forces this physical and mental shift. Nurses and doctors are incredibly good at patient care, but they're suddenly forced to revert, 15 years in the process?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. They're relying on memory, on verbal communication, on handwritten notes, all procedures that introduce the potential for human error, the very errors the EHR was designed to eliminate.
The stress alone must have been just immense. Okay, so moving on, let's look at the official response in the investigation. After containing the breach at 6:32 a.m., what were the next steps for AZ Monica?
Well, they immediately followed the established protocol for critical infrastructure attacks. They notified all the relevant authorities.
Right.
And we know that the police and the public prosecutors are now officially investigating this as a cybersecurity incident. It's being treated as a major criminal act, recognizing that an impact on a hospital is a crime against public safety.
And the hospital has been cautious, promising to continue monitoring the situation and provide updates as they get more clarity. They're trying to manage the public information flow while they recover.
And this leads us to the critical, though still unconfirmed, details around the nature of the attack itself.
Right.
It's widely known that healthcare organizations are just prime targets globally. They hold two extremely valuable things: critical operational systems and vast amounts of sensitive patient data.
Which often leads to a very specific type of criminal attack.
Exactly. We're talking about attacks known as double extortion. In a, let's say, traditional ransomware attack, criminals lock up your data and demand money for the decryption key. Simple.
Okay.
But in double extortion, they do something else first. They steal the sensitive patient data, the addresses, the diagnoses, the lab results, and then they lock the system.
So they have two levers of pressure.
Precisely. Pay us for the key to get your systems back, and pay us again so we don't leak your patient's highly personal information all over the dark web. It's brutal.
But just to be very clear, Ars Monica did not officially confirm what kind of incident this was. They haven't said if it was malware or ransomware or something else.
And that is the crucial nuance we have to stress here. Officially, the nature of the incident remains unspecified by the hospital or the prosecutors. However, this is where the investigative details get a little bit tense.
The sources do mention local media reports?
Yes. Local media started citing unconfirmed claims from sources within the hospital that the attackers might have indeed demanded a ransom.
So this is pretty standard in these high-profile incidents. You have the official silence on one hand and then the unofficial whispers on the other.
Exactly.
So we have the official parties, the hospital, the public prosecutor, staying silent on a ransom demand, while these unconfirmed reports are suggesting payment was requested. Why would a hospital choose official silence in a situation like this?
There are a few very compelling reasons. First, it could be tied to an active criminal investigation. Confirming any details could compromise the police's ability to track or apprehend the perpetrators.
Makes sense.
Second, confirming you've received a demand, or God forbid paid one, can signal to the wider criminal world that you're a viable target. It basically puts a target on your back for future attacks. And critically, they just need time to assess the scope of the damage. Do we have backups? How bad is the data loss? What are our options here?
So the silence is less about hiding the that's impossible with the operational collapse, and more about managing the immediate criminal and legal fallout.
Exactly right. For you, the listener, the key takeaway here is that while we don't know the attacker's motive with official certainty, the operational impact, the total system shutdown, the patient transfers, the forced paper intake, it was identical to what you'd see in a maximally destructive, financially motivated ransomware lockout. The result was the same: chaos, inefficiency, and immediate risk to patient care.
The whole AZ Monica incident is just such a stark, recent, and highly visible example of why cybersecurity in healthcare is so much more than an IT problem. It's a life-or-death operational necessity.
It is.
A single cyber attack instantly crippled critical life-saving services. It forced physical patient transfers and the complete cancellation of procedures on that specific date, January 13th, 2026.
So what does this all mean for these critical institutions around the world? I mean, the hospital stated very clearly in its communications afterwards that its focus remained undiminished on the safety and continuity of care for our patients.
Even as critical transport services like MU and PIT went offline and they were evacuating 7 critical patients.
Right. It highlights this incredible organizational tension.
The tension between the immediate needs and the long-term needs.
Yes. And it raises an important question for you to consider. In the face of a digital attack on physical infrastructure, where exactly does the balance lie? Where is that line between maintaining existing patient care, which the staff did heroically for those already present, and taking the immediate, decisive, and often highly disruptive actions, like cutting all your servers, that are needed to prevent future, maybe even more devastating incidents?
It's a tension between current safety and future resilience.
Yeah. And it's one that every critical organization now has to live with every single day.
A difficult, ongoing calculation for a world that has placed so much of its trust in the digital realm. Thank you for joining us for the deep dive.